Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another exciting meeting at Interpersonal Toastmasters. Let me invite this dynamic Toastmaster, who is the Toastmaster of the day, Toastmaster Viveka. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Raghu. Let me tell you a story. A town steeped in history, a lake surrounded by mountains, a mall road encircling a part of lake, pine trees, few oaks, and a small cafe near the lake. Sackley's. That's the name of the cafe. This place served the best pastries in the town, fresh and yummy. My friend Jyoti introduced me to this place. We decided to hang out together on a given Sunday. Like a 14-year-old, I got up early, ran a few errands for my mother, decked up, and left my place. We had a spot where we were supposed to meet, near the cable car station. We met. I'd recently learned to hug my friend, so I did it, complimented each other, and walked towards the cafe. It had a glass door attached to a big glass wall. The pastries, breads, cream rolls, and cakes were on display. This was quite fancy back in the 90s, especially in a small hill station in India. On Jyoti's suggestion, we ordered 2 pastries and 2 cups of coffee. That was our budget for the day, by the way. But wait, it was not just coffee. It wasn't either black coffee, it was a cappuccino. To my surprise, my friend Jyoti could pronounce the word cappuccino. Thanks to her elder sister, I guess. I was served a cappuccino in a big wide bowl kind of cup with a design on it. Suddenly it struck me. Oh, this is how adults soak life. Some money, a little cappuccino, results in a good vibe. Good morning and good afternoon to my fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests. That is Catherine for today. No, sorry. I miss one. I just need to check guest name. I'm so sorry about it.
Christine.
I am Viveka Tiwari and I am your host for the day. This session is divided into 2 parts, prepared speeches and impromptu learning experience. We have people to help us improve our language. Let's begin with Toastmaster Kenneth, who is a grammarian today. Kenneth?
Hello, good evening. I will be your grammarian. I will be looking for interesting uses of the English language and noting them. And today's word of the day is frenetic. Frenetic is an adjective. It's marked by fast, energetic, disordered, or anxiety-driven. To use it in a sentence, he succumbed to exhaustion merely trying to keep up with the president's frenetic schedule. So I will be looking for uses of the word of the day. Over to you, Toastmaster Viveka.
Aparna will improve our fluency by pointing out a redundant sounds like You know, Aparna is also the timer for today. We have 2 speakers, Piyush and Grace, who will be evaluated by Catherine and Susan. Jim, the table topic master, will wave his magic wand in the impromptu section. We will connect the dots, but before that, let's get back to business. Our first section consists of prepared speeches. Toastmaster Piyush is the first speaker. I invite Toastmaster Catherine to introduce her role and give us the objective of the speech she's going to evaluate. Toastmaster Catherine.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Viveka. It's a pleasure for me to evaluate Piyush. Piyush, congratulations on getting to your pathway level. And you are going to be telling us about your leadership style. You will be telling us about how you found your leadership style in general. I will be looking out for the following principles of your speech: a great opening, a body, and a conclusion. The other principles of your speech include clarity, vocal variety, your comfort level, and your audience awareness. Congratulations, Piyush. Thank you. Back to you, Toastmaster of the Day.
Thank you, Catherine. The first speaker is Toastmaster Piyush, and the title of his speech is My Leadership Style. My Leadership Style, Piyush.
Thank you, Toastmaster Viveka.
Piyush,
Today I'm going, sorry.
sorry, before you begin, what's the timelines of the speech?
This is
5
5
to
to 7
7?
minutes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So before I begin my speech and tell you about my leadership style that I learned using the module, I'll start by asking a question. When you see a leader or when you perceive someone as a leader, what's one thing that you notice? I'll open it up to the folks here to tell me that one point. Anyone, just say it loud, whatever you have in your mind. Who's a leader? What's one quality that you look for?
Charisma.
Charisma. Was there anything else?
Tall, dark, and handsome.
Tall, dark, and handsome. That's a nice one.
They have a sense of calm about them.
Sense of calmness. Perfect. Do we
They
have
take
one more?
criticism and appreciation equally. They accept criticism as well as appreciation equally.
Criticism and appreciation. Awesome. I got a lot of pointers. Let's see how many of these checks out in the leadership pointers or pillars that I learned in the module. So the very first one, or maybe I'll try to see which one matches. So one of it is open-minded. So the person who's a leader has to be open-minded and be open to receiving feedback and at least listening to whatever someone is saying. So kind of translate to being balanced and having that balanced approach. Charismatic, maybe I think in some sense tied to being optimistic. That's another attribute that a particular leader or in general leaders have. Even things are not going right, they are the ones who have view of what's coming in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and they are always optimistic about what they believe in, and that's why they are leading whatever they are leading. They lead by example. So as we know, we tell our kids, hey, go do this, but they probably pay less attention to what you're saying, but they're actually paying much more attention to what you're doing. So they see you glued to your phone, they start to be glued to their phone. So that's one way in day-to-day life, how we see the leadership affecting people around you. So practice what you preach, lead by example. That's another leadership principle. The leaders are also very effective communicators. They don't beat around the bush or how you grow in your leadership hierarchy. And that's one of my goal also, like how to be like really crisp and also get the point across. Like in being crisp, don't kill that like what you're trying to communicate. The last but not the least, it's the demonstrating integrity, which is really crucial for being a leader. Always work with all the ethical principle in mind and demonstrate integrity. So these were some of the leadership principles, what makes you a leader, but there are different styles. And I found my style working through the level 2 module, and I answered a bunch of questions, and I got 4 primary styles, and I was surprised, but there was one clear winner. There was 18 points on altruistic, and I totally relate to the altruistic style of leadership. And one of my managers told me something similar to the altruistic. There's something called servant leadership. So I help people like get really personalized sort of feedback or help something in a unique way. So that's in a way fits into serving others in a way that it's very personalized feedback or very personal sort of a way that affects them. Also, in my current role in my company, I have to interact with customers, trying to understand what is the problem that they are facing and how we can solve for it. That's how we create or design products, sort of a customer research. So that leadership quality of kind of getting into the persona, having customer empathy, truly relates with that altruistic style of leadership. There were 3 other sort of leadership styles that tied, that has a very close tie. Like at 17 points, I had the style of democratic, authoritative, and coaching. I can relate to coaching because one of my colleagues told me that I explain things really well. So even if that's not necessarily that I have to do, I go out of the way to help a colleague in need. And the way I explain things, her feedback was like, are you interested in being teacher at some point in your life? So I totally relate to the coaching style, and it kind of has an overlap with the altruistic style. The last 2 seems pretty interesting. So democratic and authoritative. These are, like, if you hear the words, they are 2 different things. Like either you're democratic, you ask people, invite feedback from them, or you're authoritative, you just dictate stuff. So how can I be both, right? So there are places, or there are times when I'm open to feedback. I don't know what decision to take, whether, let's say I'm designing a web page, whether a red button would fit better or a blue button, I don't know. So there are times I'm open to feedback, and there are a lot of intelligent people in the room who are subject matter experts. So they provide their feedback and help me make a decision. While in other places, I know I have done similar things and I know what is going to happen here. So I have a very clear path of telling the team specifically, hey, this is what we'll do. So that's why maybe, I have these styles. And once you are in an industry for more than 5 years, there is no yes and no answer. There is always gray area. So this sort of 2 styles signifies that. So in general, I'm very happy to have gone through the module and discovering my style, the topmost leadership style being altruistic, democratic, authoritative, and coaching being the secondary style. And my goal is to get deeper into what's working well for me, and even try to figure out how I can identify blind spots and even become better. And even on some of the other styles like democratic, authoritative, maybe learn a little bit more on how I can be authoritative, where it's sometimes difficult, like unless you're CEO, like you can't convince everybody, can't be authoritative. So those are some of the skills or areas I would like to keep on improving. So in summary, I found my leadership style, and there are 4 very distinctive styles, and I would like to continue to work on these styles and make improvement to evolve myself into a better leader. That's my speech. Thank you so much. Back to you, Toastmaster Viveka.
Thank you, Piyush, for sharing your 4 leadership styles with us. It was quite inclusive, and it was inclusive and it was inclusive and a very well designed speech, rather. I was wondering, did you prepare it, because you're very good at impromptu? So I just want to ask you, is this something, how do you do it? You write it, mug it up, or you just prepare the pointers and then continue? Because frankly, you're very good at impromptu.
Yeah, I prepared it a couple of times. I had the structure and I have some of the pointer notes. So if I forget, I can refer to those bullet points.
But it's not a mugged up speech, right? It's not like you have a paper. And
I didn't have time to, like, I used to like mug up if it is like really important presentation and I had to deliver it in like really strict timeline. Then I would like to just remember to say those only those lines that delivers the meaning. But this one, yeah, I didn't mug up. I had a structure and I have some bullet points that I can, if I somehow miss the link, I can go back and refer it to.
Yes, that's why, I understood that. I observed that you go for impromptu rather than mugging it up, which is very good. I guess that's what we are here at Toastmasters for. And I'm so influenced by you that I have a structure in front of me. I have a script. What I do is I always write a script. I just cannot work without a script. It's very difficult for me. And I saw you that, you had not mugged it up. You were not reading. You had pointers and you were referring back to them, perhaps. And it was a prepared speech. So I have decided that to improve my impromptu, I should chuck that thing and I should start what it is. And it can feel badly, but this is what we are here for. So let's do one
Maybe
thing.
can I share one quick thing very quickly?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I always remember, like, one of my previous managers told me, like, the meeting or the delivery has to be more like a conversation. So you're delivering something to your audience, and if it is a conversation, it will be well absorbed. So if you have the mindset of, hey, this is a conversation, then things will go well.
That's a very good advice. Thank you for sharing it. So I was wondering while I was listening to Piyush that we only meet online because we can't meet offline. It's an online club. And we do have human touch, but we do not have personal touch. We hardly know each other. And with respect to the theme, I would want you guys to, tell me anything about your childhood memory you have. Just go down the memory lane and tell me something fantastic. Maybe Catherine can tell me something I'm just not aware about her part of the country or her part of the culture. Maybe Susan can tell her about a childhood I don't even know about that era. Maybe Jin can say something, anything, and then we can go back to the speech section.
Thank you. I will start. My childhood, something really that fascinated me was the holidays when I was growing up. My father offered to be Father Christmas for the community. And for a long time, got up at 6 a.m. and went outside to meet Father Christmas. It was this man who wore a red costume and put some cotton around his mouth to look like the white beard. And he had some glasses. And he sang, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. And we sang Christmas carols. And he gave us gifts. And some of the gifts were gifts that I know that he knew. But it never occurred to me that this is my dad, up until maybe the 7th year. And then I'm like, but this guy sounds like someone I know. And so one of these days, he got back home earlier while we were still having fun and unwrapping our gifts as children, and changed into his normal daddy outfit. But because he had a mustache, he forgot one piece of the cotton on his beard. And as I got home, I said, Daddy, can you believe Father Christmas gave me Oscar from, what was it called? From the, it's a kids, there was an Oscar from a kids, I've forgotten its name. It's a Sesame Street. Oscar from Sesame Street. Can you believe I have Oscar from Sesame Street? And then as he was smiling, I saw the cotton. I was like, Daddy, it was you. It was you. And I busted my, my surprise, So that was my secret story about Christmas. I wish I could bring back my father. It's been long gone 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. That's the pronunciation of your name, right? Catherine. Thank you. I'm laughing. That was quite a hilarious one. So let's get back to the speech section. Second speaker is Grace, and I would invite Susan to give us the objective of the speech that she will be evaluating. Susan?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Grace will be speaking from her Level 3 elective, Present a Proposal. She will be practicing developing and presenting a proposal to us, and her timing is 5 to 7 minutes, and her speech title is How to Be More Empathetic. So please help we welcome Grace with her proposal for us.
A second speaker is Toastmaster Grace. Title of her speech is How to Be More Empathetic. I repeat, How to Be More Empathetic, Toastmaster Grace.
Thank you, Madam Toastmasters. Perhaps many of you have heard the word empathy, maybe from the lips of people like frantic politicians, educators, and leaders from our workplaces. But what is really empathy? And how can we be more empathetic towards others? Empathy is defined as the ability to step into the shoes of another person, aiming to understand their feelings and perspectives, and to use that understanding to guide our actions. They say that being empathetic helps us to become better managers and workers, and even better family member or friend, because it allows us to build connection and compassion that is crucial for us to build a more sustainable and humane future. Fellow Toastmasters, today I am here to propose 4 tips on how we can be more empathetic with other individuals. The first step that I'm going to tell all of you is that we should practice talking to strangers. I don't know if many of you have heard this line growing up, don't talk to strangers. But in reality, talking to strangers helps us to develop our empathetic skills because it rewires our brain and we become curious about the other person. When I say curious about the other person, it means that we are curious about people outside our social circle, encountering lives and worldviews that are very different from our own. For instance, when somebody like an Uber driver would ask me how my day is going when I ride that car, just to strike up a conversation as he drove me from point A to B, it is a good feeling for me, and I value it because a complete stranger can be genuinely interested and wish me very well. The second tip I will tell you is that we can also learn to listen hard and open up. Active listening is our ability to be present to what's really going on, to the unique feelings and needs and experiencing in that very moment. We should be able not only to listen, but to become vulnerable by removing our mask and emotional state. Know that empathy is always a two-way street, building mutual understanding, an emotional exchange of beliefs and experiences. For instance, I would suggest that you should visit a friend when you had an experience caring for like a family member who had a terminal disease like cancer. By visiting that friend, you can share your experiences and ideas and beliefs all together. Comfort her and be vulnerable as well when you are undergoing that same situation before. Third, we can always inspire action and promote social change. Let us acknowledge our privilege and put them to use on behalf of the other people or groups that don't directly impact us. Remember that we don't need to understand everything about the other person just to make them feel respected. We can advocate for others that would help others even if they don't directly affect us. For example, we can advocate for things like climate change, diversity in our workplaces, and simply accommodations and inclusion for our differently abled brothers and sisters. Fourth and last, and I could say that this is simply easy, we can simply spend kindness on others. Oftentimes, it can be really hard to be kind, especially when we are busy and stressed. But we can take time to spend a little way to help someone's life and make it better. Research suggests that performing this tiny kindness act, especially at moments when we feel we cannot, can be energizing and enlivening. Take, for example, when you're doing grocery shopping, maybe pick up your partner's favorite coffee. Or if you are living in an apartment, you can help carry an older neighbor's grocery upstairs. Building empathy isn't necessarily about donating half of your salary to charity. It is about the little things that we do every single day. Because empathy is a rare skill. It is something that can be developed. I hope that my 4 proposed tips can help you to become more empathetic towards others. The more that we can cultivate our own empathy and encourage others, the more we'll be contributing to an overall culture of kindness. And by calling kindness out, we're more likely to make a magnetic social force. Back to you, Madam Toastmasters.
Thank you, Grace, for teaching us how to be empathetic. Yes, you were right. It's about those little things. It's not about spending money in charity. It's about those little things. They matter a lot. Now, when I was talking about a 14-year-old and a cafe experience, I was not just talking about a 14-year-old and a cafe experience. I was talking about the time when, during the period when we are children, we are so excited about things. We have to buy a new pair of shoe. We think about it all the day, probably for a week, go round and round about it. And then we get a new pair of shoe. We have to buy a new computer. We're excited about it. We're excited about everything. We are excited about traveling, say, to the market. And now when we visit a new country, we are not that excited. We are tired. Oh my God, we have to get a visa. And then, the process gets, oh my God, or it's so hot or it's so cold. And when we are children, we don't even think about cold or hot or the weather. We are excited about everything. Everything is new. Everything has a novelty factor. And I used to think, and as time passed by, of course, there were many coffee shops, there were many malls, because I moved from a smaller place to a bigger city. And there were many baristas. And then came Starbucks and I started earning. So yes, once you start earning, you are not dependent on your family, and then you can have a cup of coffee or snacks whenever you want to, or you can shop. But over the period of years, the novelty factor starts fading. And that's what I'm talking about. And I always realized that the fun that I used to have when I used to get that small pocket money and this much of freedom and this much of pocket money, the happiness was this much. But when I had this much of money and a lot of freedom, my happiness was like, I'll just go to a place, order something. And it was like, as if I'm running an errand. It was not, fun. So this is what I was talking about. And now let's get back to another section of our Toastmasters Club, which is table topics. And Jim will take care of the table topic section, which is the impromptu speech section. Jim, please take the stage.
Thank you very much, Madam Toastmaster, and welcome everyone tonight. My first question is for Grace. And Grace, I'd like to ask you, who's the most empathetic person that you know?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, for that question. I think the most empathetic person that I know of is my mother. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons for how empathetic she is. First of all, she's very empathetic with social cause. She taught me how to be able to stand up for causes that are important, and such as advocating for people with disabilities. And also another thing that I've learned from my mother is helping others. Even in little small ways, she would always tell me to do something, push me to do something to help others. I remember when I was in grade school, sometimes she would put extra bread or something in my lunchbox so that I could share it to my classmates. And that's one of the things that I've learned from her about empathy. And I think the last thing that I've learned about empathy from my mother is simply being present and just listening to that person, especially if that person is a very first, I mean, you met that person for the very first time. And so these three things that I've learned from my mother, I think makes her to be the most empathetic person I have known of. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. My next question is for Aparna. And I'd like to ask you, Aparna, in your opinion, what's the best way to help people who are dealing with the frenetic weather that you mentioned earlier tonight?
That was a great use there. Thank you, Tabletop Toastmaster. I'm not sure if I'm visible. Am I audible? I'm hoping I am. The best way to help people who are facing, that frantic weather that you talked about, I think just being empathetic. A little while ago, what Grace mentioned, being there for people. Most of the times, people are not seeking. People are only wanting to be heard. And somewhere in that frenetic life that we keep leading, charging, wanting to make a difference, doing things for people, resolving issues, it's never about the other person. Very often it becomes more about us. So if we could aim and say, what could I do? And if I can't do anything, could I just wait and listen? And that would also suffice. So every single time, it's not really action that's needed. However, in the present stuff, I think the only thing that I can do is juggle between, in this meeting, juggle between, different handsets and gadgets to do the work that I'm supposed to do, and pray that the power gets back quickly and the weather helps us through the day. But back to you, Tabletop Master.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next question is for Catherine. What do you think that what's the best contribution that you think that Africa has made to the world?
Thank you. I think that Africa has brought so much to the world, and I will break them down into three main issues. One is the world is surviving on a lot of Africa's natural resources, from medicine to minerals to construction to the industries. Africa has benefited many, many, many nations of the world through the natural resources. Africa has also made the greatest contribution to the world through culture, diversity, and compassion. In my world, because Africa has suffered several atrocities like war and disease, a lot of the interest of what you would call the international community or the international donations and charitable work has mostly been done in Africa. But what has this done? It has made people receive a heart of genuine compassion. Because in Africa, when you give in Africa, there's not going to be a tax refund. there's no system that will refund your taxes or refund your donations. So if you're going to give, you're giving because you love. If you're going to give, you're giving because you are sold out. And so I think that Africa's contribution to the rest of the world has been natural and mineral resources, diversity and culture, and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Next question is for Susan. Who is your favorite painter and why?
Mr. Topic Master, fellow Toastmasters, I am rather enamored by the Impressionistics. As you can see, I have behind me a Monet. That particular bridge is a Japanese bridge over a little pond where there were flowers and lily pads growing. It's in Giverny, just outside of Paris, quite near the Palace of Versailles, not too far. It was a side trip for us one time, and we were able to go to some of the museums and to see the Monets from the actual museums. I was quite shocked because they weren't what I thought of with the light and the color. He had a lot of dark periods. He had paintings that went 30 feet long and 12 feet high, and they were nearly blue-black, dark. It was his dark period. I would not have been enamored of him if those were the pictures that I had seen. Today is a rare occasion. I'm not wearing flowers, but 99% of the time I have something in a floral pattern, and I think it has been inspired by God's creation of floral colors and fragrances and beauty. And when I stood at that very bridge, overlooking that pond with lily pads and such, I was agape with awe, just standing there thinking, no wonder he wanted to paint it. My photographs don't do it justice. I could stand there in total silence to enjoy that scene. So when I saw this background for Zoom for free from 1,000 museums, you can get Gauguin and you can get Van Gogh and so many of the other masters. But Monet was one of my favorites always. And when I stood there, I knew why. Mr. Topic Master.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next question for Kenneth. Kenneth, could you tell us what you like most about living on the West Coast?
Thank you for that question, Table Topic Master Jim. West Coast is definitely the best coast. The reason why I like living on the West Coast is probably a lot to do with the weather. If you've ever grown up in California, for me, I was born here in California and I've lived here my entire life, which has basically spoiled me rotten. Other parts of the world, such as the East Coast, have this thing called seasons, where there's snow, fall, winter. As a Californian, I've only ever known one excruciatingly long season. We have some periods where it's a little bit warmer, but from day to day, we don't have a whole lot of variation. So I think, as a West Coaster, specifically in California, our weather is unparalleled. I think the only place where maybe you could find some weather that might be better might be like Italy or like Milan, these super attractive places that don't even sound like a place where people live, just vacation to. And as a Californian, that's our day-to-day. Not to mention, we also have another notable things while you're enjoying that weather is we have a lot of hiking. And so with our hiking, we actually have the now native Californian redwood, which if you've never seen is kind of the tree of the West Coast. It is a beautiful tree that once you're inside a grove of redwoods is almost healing if you're out in nature. So the California and the West Coast has a lot to offer, and I recommend a trip out there for anybody on the call who is maybe going through a frenetic period and needs, to go be around some redwoods. California is your best bet. Back to you, Topic Master Jim.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next question for our guest, Christine Sweeting. What is your favorite pastime?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topic Master. Thank you for that wonderful question. My favorite pastime is spending time with my children in church. I grew up in an abusive home. So as I got older, I got defensive for children. So I have a passion for children. So I will spend my time, if I have vacation, I spend vacation Bible school with the children. If they need snacks, I'm willing to do that. That's I find, doing that. So that's what I enjoy doing on my pastime. Thank you, Mr. Table Topic Master.
Thank you very, very much. Okay. I'm told that that's the last question. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughtful answers. Thank you so much. Back to you, Madam Madam Toastmaster. Thank you.
At least you use the word Toastmasters or master. I don't even use that word. I always forget it. And then I see people, they are using the word Toastmaster. It's
Okay.
like a name, the first name before the actual name. So, all right. So as I was talking about it, so I recently visited Jim Hortons. It's a Canadian-based coffee brand, which is very famous in Canada and worldwide. It's not as famous as Starbucks, let me tell you this, at least for Indians and Asians, but it's a famous one. So I visited one of the new stores and I was like, oh, and I scheduled the trip. I said, today is my shopping day and I would pay a visit to Jim Hortons and I'll grab a cup of coffee with a snack, of course. So I went to the store. The ambience was great. I asked for my typical cappuccino. That's the only coffee that I take. And they served me in a beautiful red cup. They had a red cup and the font, on top of it, on the cup, it was written Jim Hortons. It was a brand logo. And it was, the fonts were really nice. I really liked it. I really liked the ambience. And I was thinking, why is it that I don't enjoy it the way I used to do it in childhood? And then I realized that it's not about that. And I used to think that people, a part of our journey takes a toll on us when we grow up. Maturing takes a toll on us and we start forgetting those little things that Grace talked about, those little things, helping out people, etc., etc. And then I thought that I should start enjoying more. I should start tasting snow someday, that I used to do when I was a child. And that is how it is. So we have our results. We shall start with the evaluations. We are running out of time. Susan and Catherine, I think we can start with Catherine.
Thank you so much, Viveka, Toastmaster. Piyush, congratulations on delivering your dynamic leadership pathway and new leadership style. You started us off by asking the audience a question just before you delivered your speech. And this question opened up the audience to engaging with you. Already, that was a plus. By the time you started to deliver your speech, I don't even remember when it started. I was already engrossed. I was already engrossed in your delivery, in your conversation. You had already hooked us at that point. When you started to deliver your speech, you spent some time talking about some of the qualities that the audience gave you, and you merged them with some of the qualities that you had discovered you knew. This was certainly whetting our appetite for the content that you were delivering. You had us hooked. And then you presented principles like practice what you preach, crisp or straight to the point. And one of the key principles you mentioned was integrity. In your delivery, you were able to bring out the details that we needed to hear on your leadership style, but you spent time giving us a broad perspective of what leadership looks like. Therefore, we were eager to find out what has Piyush discovered. And indeed, you were excellently delivering how you discovered your leadership style. And these were some of the areas you discovered through a Toastmaster survey, one of your old managers, and your current role. You gave us the details of your leadership styles, and you also mentioned unconventional combinations of the leadership style, where you asked us, how can I be both? That was wonderful, Piyush. In general, you brought us to the state of your style, and you mentioned one primary style and two secondary styles. Your goals on how you're going to maximize your styles to deliver your potential as a leader and areas of improvement. This was a stellar presentation. You excelled at bringing your delivery as a conversation. You excelled as being very clear and very comfortable with your audience. I found very minimal reasons for you to work on some areas. The only thing I will still say is give us a specific distinction between your transitions. It was very flawless. This distinction will also be something that you will certainly think through, but I think on the whole, Piyush, you have delivered a stellar piece. Thank you for delivering your leadership style.
Thank you, Catherine. Susan, you can take the stage, please.
You're muted,
I
Susan.
know, I'm working on the mute. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and Grace. Where are you? You're hiding. It's easier for me to connect. I hope you're here to listen. There we are.
Yeah.
Thank you. I find it easier to connect with you if I'm able to see. Thank you. Thank you, Grace. I want to thank you for giving us your proposal on how we might become more empathetic. Not only did you propose that as a thought, but you gave us real steps to take care of that. 4 different steps, 4 points, 4 tips on how we can do it. I thought your word choices were clear. We were able to fully understand everything that you said. It was done with great clarity and great enunciation. There were times when you had excellent vocal variety, when you were coming across with a new tip, but for part of your presentation, you were in a very conversational mode. I would recommend that you try to challenge yourself with a bit more variety in changing your pace from either that calmness or to a more frenetic, more impactful time when there is something that is going awry. Those are opportunities for you. You did have good eye contact with us, so we were able to see you. It was apparent you were comfortable with the audience, and in that calm method, trying to be empathetic for others, the best advice that I heard from you was to be present and listen. And sometimes it's not about the speaking or the doing, but more about the being present and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Here in America, we had Native Americans, and I know one of the phrases was, walk a mile in the other man's moccasins. If you could know what it feels like to be in their shoes and physically manage that process, we forget about self and move forward. I want to thank you for a job well done, with one recommendation for a stronger impact for you, Grace. When you come to the close of your proposal, challenge your audience. You told us and you gave us some great advice, but maybe outwardly state, I challenge each of you to take any one of these 4 or all 4 of these steps to help you on the road to becoming more empathetic. And that be a final thought for your audience. That'll be greater impact. But great job, Grace. I look forward to your next speech.
Thank you, Susan. Kenneth, can we have the grammarian's report?
Certainly. We had uses of the word of the day by Jim, Aparna, and myself. Some interesting uses of the English language. Susan was enamored by the Impressionists. Walk a mile in another man's moccasins. And Catherine used, I was engrossed in your delivery. Those were what I heard today in terms of interesting uses of the English language. Back to you, Viveka.
And Kenneth, I must thank you for suggesting Kopi Luwak. That's the most expensive coffee. That's what I Googled. Is it right? In the world.
That's my understanding. I've never tried it myself, but it's a small weasel-like creature will eat the coffee beans and then digest it and go through a natural fermentation, and it's very desirable. I've never tried it myself.
But it's pretty famous. It's becoming a fad these days. I think it's Indonesian.
I believe so.
So yes, Aparna, can we have the reports?
Sure. So I just kind of discovered at the end that apparently my video wasn't is seen. So I'm not sure how many saw the cards. I was attempting to hold my phone against the screen, but I will just walk people through first the timer report and then the our counter or our reports there. So to start off with our regular speech round, prepared speeches, Piyush took 6 minutes and 48 seconds. And later we had Grace as the second speaker, and Grace took 5 minutes and 24 seconds. We moved into the table topics with Grace starting off, and she took 1 minute, 34 seconds. I'm not sure of my time, but I thought it was 2 minutes and 2 seconds. We had Catherine next with 2 minutes and 34 seconds. Susan in exactly 2 minutes. Kenneth took 1 minute and 55 seconds. And our guest, Christine, wrapped up hers in 42 seconds. Later came the evaluation rounds with Catherine taking 2 minutes and 34 seconds and Susan with 2 minutes and 45 seconds. As the report for the R counter, I'll start off with Piyush again. Piyush, a lot of use of the word R. When you're thinking, you go R, and another one that you tend to use as a crutch word is sort of. Though sort of as a use comes in when you're free-flowing thought as compared to your prepared speech. Catherine, I loved your story on Father Christmas. Susan, when you talked, absolutely flawless. Great pace there. Grace, your pace in your prepared speech was wonderful. No filler words used there. Table topics, Jim, a couple of us. Grace, in the table topics, a few us. I don't know about myself. Susan, again, as I mentioned earlier, and Catherine, both of you flawless, love the pace. You think your words through, and hence there are no fillers there. Kenneth, none at all. Christine, a crutch word perhaps, you know, but then that was possibly because you were gathering your thoughts. Evaluation rounds, none used. Viveka, we've heard you speak the most, and hence I think I heard a few R's there. Also, when you're thinking and then you tend to repeat words when you're gathering, so words like I, or the word like replaces some of those. So those are the two reports from my end. Back to you, Toastmaster for the day.
Thank you, Aparna. So Christine, would you like to give us some feedback?
Thank you. I enjoyed the meeting. It is now 10:35 p.m. where I live in the Bahamas, the beautiful sunny island of New Providence in the Bahamas. So I enjoyed just sitting here tonight, enjoying your meeting. definitely will be back. I enjoyed the speech. Definitely. And maybe can I be the timer next time I visit?
Wonderful, Christine. Thank you for taking that up.
Yes. So I have the share